glad to join you guys here. I'm sorry I couldn't see from there. So how many developers in the house again? That's so nice to see. Our people, right? So as he said that, remote work, we really love remote work. And throughout this presentation, that will be my focus, not only for people who are programming currently, but also for people who wish to get into that line, or people who are not from that field specifically. I've tried my best to make this presentation useful for you, right? So the first request is, I was observing everyone using their phones. Humble request to please not do that. A lot of information will be bombarded at you. I would recommend if you can, just take out some notes or something like that if you want to note down. I'll be sharing these slides anyways, on my SlideShare account. So I guess you all will get it. Cool. So I think there's some sort of delay in the slides. But until then, I'll tell you a theory, right? How many of you know about dopamine? Like, what is dopamine? All right, so only a few hands. Dopamine is the drug which gets, it's the chemical which gets released in our brain when you actually consume drugs, right? Now, the same dopamine gets released when you do this. And you keep scrolling, right? So that is what was happening while you were, spending that time on your phones when other speakers were speaking. So we need to figure out a way to actually avoid that to happen, because that wastes a lot of time, right? So yesterday, I was in a presentation where I saw some of the things from Facebook that said that an average user spends 2 hours on their phones scrolling, right? Average user, 2 hours. Now, I'm going to talk a lot about time here, and I'll tell you why I said this towards the beginning of this presentation. So I am from Pesto Tech, as you can see here. Pesto Tech is a boot camp where we train people for 3 months. We train engineers for 3 months, and then we place them as a remote employee in US tech companies. And as Mohan mentioned, that since last 5 years, the technology has evolved so much that employees can now be remote. There is no need for employees or colleagues to work from a fixed office location, right? We have seen the rise of companies like GitLab, Zapier, etc., which are 100% remote, right? Now, I'll tell you a second interesting thing about this. Now, what happens with being remote is, I see it, we take opportunities to places where talent exists, right? The reason we started the company was that we saw that wages of Indian engineers are super low. Sometimes it goes as low as $500 a month, right? And these are the engineers who get hired in bulk, right? 50 to 100 engineers, which is why I got, I left my college. I dropped out after a year, right? Now, I'll tell you the scenario in US. The base salary of a good engineer starts with $100,000, which is roughly around 72 lakhs now, right? So with remote work, what we do is that we take engineers who understand technology well, and then we place them as remote employees in US tech companies, and then they end up making much more money than they were making before. And throughout this presentation, I'll talk about what are the things which makes an effective remote employee. All right, cool. So before we get into that, I would like you to understand why should we actually care, right? So this graph shows the way humanity has developed in last 100 years, right? We have seen landline, telephone took about 40 to 50 years to get massive adoption, right? But as you move towards as you move towards last 10 to 20 years, technology has taken off very fast, right? So Alexander Bell, who actually invented a telephone, was rejected to sell his patent for $100,000 because people believed, who wants to call, if you can just send a letter to someone, right? So from there to today's age, when millions of people actually downloaded Pokemon Go in just one day, right? That's how engineering has evolved. That's the impact which engineers have had in this world. And this pace of impact is increasing rapidly, which means that the pace of adoption of technology by the market is increasing at a massive pace, which has never happened before in humanity, right? So this is why we actually belong to a golden age where we can take this for granted. Next, please. Cool. So I posted this picture that if the previous slide did not motivate you enough, then you can put this picture at your wall and then follow the line downstairs, right? You need to work and have the hunger in order to be an effective developer, in order to be relevant in today's world, like someone else is working 24 hours a day to make that happen for you. Now, the biggest thing which matters to a developer is their time, right? And I'll dig deep into why time matters, right? So let's do some maths. Let's understand by 2 hours which you waste on Facebook, what is the importance and cost of that, and what is, most importantly, the opportunity cost of that time, right? So here it is, the math of how much time you have in your life. Now, I could not get a data based on Indian population because, Indian parents make it very difficult for us to do the counting. So this data belongs to United States, right? With average, life expectancy rate being 82 years. So if you're living in Delhi, expect much less, right? So if you break those 82 years into seconds, you come down to 2.5 or 2.6 billion seconds, right? Now, out of those 2.6 billion seconds, 30% of your life, I'm assuming the average age of this room is 25 years, right? Which is, again, very optimistic, very young, right? So I see uncle smiling there. So you are already done 30% with 30% of your life. Now let's look at the other 30% of the life which you actually spend while sleeping, right? So the graph which I just showed you a couple of minutes ago, the impact which you have to create or the opportunity which you have to create that impact, the time which you have to do that is already reduced to half without even doing anything, right? You have lost that time. Now what you do in future matters, right? Now, if we have limited time and if we want to do something in life, then how can we actually increase our time, right? We can increase our time by increasing our productivity, right? We can increase our time by increasing our teammates' productivity, right? And if we want to really create an impact, then we can increase a community's life, right? How many of you here do open source projects? All right, I'm really glad to see those hands. So let me first start with how can you save time for yourself, right? Quick math. If you do keyboard shortcuts, if you use keyboard shortcuts, then how much time can you actually save, right? So this data shows you that you take like about 2 seconds, every minute to switch from your mouse to your keyboard. Every minute you take 2 seconds of productivity loss, right? And if you do the math, then it comes out to be 64 hours a year, right? Which is almost 8 days. Just imagine, 8 days, you're just doing this, right? So by doing small thing like learning keyboard shortcuts, you can actually save 8 days, which is 3.3% of your productivity. The second thing is automation. As a programmer, your life's goal should be to automate everything, right? Which is why we saw that graph. What's happening since last 100 years is that we have been automating everything and we have been making everything more efficient, right? So if we have to automate something, then how do we take that call that what are the things we should automate, right? Then in that case, I think we should follow a golden rule of thumb. If you do anything more than thrice, right? If you do anything more than thrice, you write a script for it, right? And once you write a script for it, you need to remember that a good programmer is a programmer which solves his problem. A great programmer is a programmer which solves his teammates' problems. And a legendary programmer is a programmer which solves the community's problem, right? So once you write a script, don't forget to make it open source, right? Cool. The next thing is using equipments, right? If you are heading into a war, then a smart thing is to have really nice guns, right? It's like to have really nice firepower with you, right? And as a programmer, your equipments are everything for you. This is the most understated thing which I've seen in the Indian ecosystem, right? Some of the things which I would like to point out, I've just listed some of them here, but I've created a bit.ly link where there is a list of things which will boost your productivity, including from earphones to headphones to eye masks. You can check that out. The link is bit.ly/Pesto Equipments. The things which I mentioned here is monitor, external keyboard, mouse, etc., right? The next thing is, how can you increase your team's productivity? Now, this is interesting, right? This, I believe, is one of the soft skills which we lack, which we experienced by working with people in US, the amount of empathy which they had, which great developers had, right? So when I say US, I'm actually referring to good developers. They can actually be based anywhere. It's just my personal experience has been with US, right? So when you actually do things like these, you improve the productivity of your entire team. One of those things is documenting everything. When you are using something and you figure out a way to, how things should be done and how the process looks like, the best idea to do then is to write a documentation for it, right? When you write a documentation for something, for example, if you took 3 hours to create something, it will take 15 minutes for you to write the documentation, right? For the next person who tries to do something, he can just read the documentation and get rid of those 3 hours. It improved his productivity. And if you just multiply that with the number of team members you have, the productivity of the team just goes very high, right? One of the best examples of documentation resources, one of my favorites is GitLab's handbook, right? You must check it out. I think, yeah. So GitLab handbook is, GitLab being a fully remote company is one of the most well-documented, they have one of the most well-documented resources, and I'm a big fan. The tools which you can use to document things, Notion.so and Dropbox Paper are a couple of them. Notion is like our favorite, so we just go ahead with that. The next thing is easy handoffs, right? Now, this is just making your teammates feel good. Like when someone comes up to you and communicates something in such a manner that you completely understand, it's like magic, right? It's like you don't need to think too much about it. One example which I've mentioned here is that my co-founder, who is Andrew Linford, he's based in SF, right? So he has no idea what cities and states in India are. So if he texts me that, Ayush, I don't think you can see that, right? So if he texts me that I need your address, and I just write the entire address in one line, versus I break down the address in city, country, pin code, and things which he understands, it would just become much better, right? Now, this was an easy example, or a very simple example. Let me show you some more practical ones which comes in handy. So, along with this, another thing which comes into play is that when you're actually trying to communicate something, you just communicate that in text or in limited amount, then it may cause confusion, right? So if someone is looking at your work, and one good example is someone who is reviewing your pull requests, right? You wrote a bunch of code to solve a problem. That person has no idea what that problem is. He has no idea how that works, right? But he's reviewing your code, right? But he's not a machine. So he will have to spend a lot of time to understand it. Now, only if you do some documentation and create a README along with your pull request, and also attach a GIF with that, showing how it actually works, the life for that person to review your pull request becomes easy, right? One good example is this. So it's actually a GIF. It's not playing in here, but this person has actually submitted a pull request, and he has mentioned everything which happens with this piece of code, and he has attached a GIF along with it, right? And the tool which I've used to show you how this works is called MonoSnap. I'll be talking about more tools. I'll give you a list of things so that you can, go home and reflect back onto it. Over communication to make it easy. As I said in the first slide, right? Address was a very simple example, but let's look at the more practical ones which you come across every single day. Now, if you and your friend are working on something and you have 10 issues, right? And you need to collaborate. Yes, GitHub makes it very easy for your code to merge and things like that, and there are multiple tools for doing those things. But the way you communicate the message with him to collaborate is just magical, right? Now, the way this person has included slides is that he just gave a list of things which he was working on, and then he just wrote down a list of things which he has fixed and a list of things which he has not fixed. So just by doing like little bit of effort, the lives for the other person becomes so much easier. Now the next slide is emails. Now one of the things which I've observed, how many of you think that you are like really a pro with emails? Okay, that's nice, so that you can get more value from it. Cool. So when it comes to emails, I feel that there is this perception when people actually look at their emails, we have all been there, right? So the way you do it is that you open the unread emails, and if it is important, you mark it as unread so that you will look at it in future, and then when you get too many mails, that task gets lost, right? One of the most important things working as a professional is to never, ever, ever, ever lose a track of your emails. Because that is something which is super, super important when it comes to working professionally with anyone in the world, right? So your email is actually your to-do list, right? And how do you manage your email with the to-do list, and how do best people in the world manage their emails so that they never miss a single mail is by just archiving all their emails, right? And having a rule that when they look at one mail, they either snooze it or they archive it, right? Snooze, archive, or solve. So that you need to achieve inbox 0 every single day towards the end, right? The second thing which comes is setting expectations straight, especially when you're working remote. So what happens is that when I communicated with someone, hey, I won't be in office tonight, I'll come back here tomorrow. Or I won't be here till 6 p.m., I may join at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, right? Now, if suppose you have like 10 people in the team, someone is from Thailand, someone is from Australia, Europe, and so on and so forth, right? This message which you just sent them is completely meaningless, right? And they will have to do a ton of work to make things happen, right? So what you do is that you set expectations super straight, you communicate with time zones, you set up, a Calendly link so that in case of an emergency, they can figure out something and they can reach out to you, right? And especially one of the best things, my favorite part says, when someone is trying to mail you, you must, and it's like one of the best habits I've seen in people, they set up an autoresponder which just replies back immediately saying at what time you check your email, right? So if you just set up a rule that I'm going to check my email at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., whatever time, it just becomes so much easier for people to collaborate with you. The next thing is Timebody. Now, if you are actually collaborating with so many people from across so many time zones, how do you actually keep a track of those things, right? So one of the best things to do as a pro person is to mention the time zone of the person who is receiving the mail so that it just becomes so much easier. It's like magic, right? It's such a small thing, but it works like magic. It just saves him time and makes it comfortable for them to, just look at this mail. One tool to use is Timebody. Then saving time for community. As I mentioned that legendary programmers are the ones who contribute to the community. And I guess we have a lot of them here, right? So I'm so happy to see that. So you need to look at the things which has actually solved problems in your life. For those who are not into it until now, I'm trying to convince them to join it. Just think about how much problems React has solved for you. Think about how many problems Node has solved for you. Linux, right? We all love those softwares. But how much time do we take to actually contribute back to the community? What do we actually do for the community? Like giving back is one of the most important things because that's how the community exists, right? But what are the advantages of, contributing back to the community? Some of you might argue you're a professional, you're not a social worker, right? That's okay, I've seen those arguments. But when you actually contribute to the open source community, a couple of things happens which is very interesting. At Pesto, out of those 3 months of training, an entire month is dedicated to work on open source projects, right? Entire month, right? So that's like 33.33% of the entire course is working on open source community. Now, why does it work? It's because this gives our people an opportunity to work with literally one of the best developers in the world and learn a ton of things from them and get the exposure which they need to realize how things work at that level, how things work at that scale, right? And when you're working in open source, it's really hard, right, to submit pull requests because those are like literally one of the best people. This pushes your limits to, help you get much, much better. So that's why you should definitely look into this and try to contribute towards that. Our contribution as Pesto, one of the things which we have done is that the curriculum which we have prepared for full stack JavaScript program which we have made the curriculum completely open source, right? You can go on this link, bit.ly/pesto-curriculum, and you can have a look at that curriculum which we have shared. And you can also contribute, right? Tools that make you a superhuman. So I've just created this list so that everyone can look at it and apply these in whatever ways you can, because I believe that these have been like lifesaver for me. I'll quickly mention one line about each of them. Rescue time, a lifesaver from Facebook, and a bunch of other distractions, right? This tool keeps a track of everything which you do during the day and makes your life super easy. The second tool is Notion.so. It makes your life simple in terms of documentation and saves time for your colleagues. The third tool, it is Use Loom, one of my favorite tools. When you actually are trying to convey the message to a friend that, hey, I found this bug, and can you resolve it? So this is one of the best things which could happen, right? Now, you just convey this message, but your friend has no idea how to reproduce it, right? Because he hasn't found it yet. So Use Loom allows you to record your screen along with a small tiny face of yours, and you can convey that message, talk to that person along with your screen, and it becomes super easy, and it's completely free of cost. I'm a big fan. The next is for collaboration, whatever you like. Slack, Workplace, Basecamp for your team. The next one is Mixmax, one of my favorites. When you're actually trying to schedule a meeting with someone, this actually takes you like 3 to 4 follow-ups, right? Mixmax allows you to just send a complete, slots, 3 to 4 slots, and the other person can confirm a meeting with you on just one click. Now, this increases the chances of conversion by 60%, right? The second thing which it does is that it enables you to send automated emails and helps you track your emails and things like that, so you must have that. The next tool is 1Password. It helps you keep a track of all your passwords, and you can never, get screwed by a hacker because these guys create really complex passwords and save it there. The next tool is Zapier. Developers, how many of you use Zapier? That's surprising. So you must check out Zapier, right? It is used to automate your workflow. So all the tools which you have seen here, you can actually automate all your workflow using Zapier. It's also one of the best remote companies in the world, like apart from GitLab. So you must check out their things. The next tool is marker.io. It just completely takes a screenshot and uploads and gives you a link which you can share with anyone on the go. The next tool is Pocket. You might have so many things to learn, but no time for it. This saves you, all the articles which you want to read in future. Monosnap, one of my favorites for over communication, the tool which I used to create the previous image with boxes and arrow, this was done using Monosnap. It can also record your screen along with your face. The next, Wunderlist, right? Everyone struggles with a to-do list. This is the best app I could find which simplified my life. Now, how to learn, right? Let's come to this. When we are actually growing as a developer, so it's very confusing looking at so many things. Hey, that's the latest thing coming up. Should I get into it? Should I not get into it? There are lots of confusions which comes up, right? So I'll talk about all of those. Now, Warren Buffett says that if you read 500 pages a day, then your knowledge is going to grow like compound interest, right? And this is so true, because I'm not saying it. Warren Buffett did, right? So this is one of the things which I consider very, very important. And he also said that I know all of you want to do it, but very less number of you will do it, right? Which is also true. Now, when it comes to learning something, when you're looking at digging into like some new technologies and things like that, the first thing is, you need to have a mindset, right? The mindset of either going deep or being on the surface, right? You cannot do both, right? A lot of people try to do this, you will fail, right? The second thing is, don't chase the next shiny thing, right? It's like, React has been there for a while, but should you look into, that's a waste of time. Reason being that the things which you're looking at, which are coming next, but don't have a community yet, you should not shift your complete focus to that. because projects come and die, right? People who are in JavaScript, they know the pain, right? Follow the relevant people. Following people on Twitter, Medium, and a bunch of other blogs is super important. So that keeps you updated on everything latest which is happening. It's a basic thing which everyone should do, right? If you're off to becoming a professional developer, focus on the stuff that won't change. This is for beginners, right? If you're actually starting to code or you have been there for a while but you're looking to explore into a new field or things like that, your focus should be on things which don't change, because in technology, all of us know how fast things change, right? Now, pro tips to be one of the best. Like, that was how you can get started. Now, this is about how you can, level up your game. The first thing is programming deliberately, right? Any piece of code which you wrote, which you did not understand, which may or may not work, is not programming deliberately. It's programming by coincidence, right? Programming deliberately is when you completely understand the logic, when you completely understand how it's going to work, and you're super confident about it, and you write that piece of code, and it works, right? The second thing is read all the docs, sometimes the source code. The way things work is that you need to, when you're stepping into a new language, let's say React, right? It's a huge library, and it's so difficult to remember everything. But once you go through the entire thing, and you come across problems like, I need to solve this, and you start building it up, you might actually have something over there, right, which you can just use quickly to solve your problems. So it's highly recommended to go through the documentation completely. The next thing is never commit code when you can't explain that, right? The same thing. When you don't understand it, do not commit it, right? If you follow this as like your philosophy without anyone looking over your shoulders, and you just having the hunger to be the best, and you having being attached to your code, that's when you actually start leveling up your game. The next thing is, how do we actually search for problems, right? It's like we came across something, and we just started pinging our friend, hey, can you solve this, or can you help me with this? That's a waste of time for you and your friend as well, because he will have to look into it, just the things which you just did, right? So the first thing to do is to ask yourself. One of my favorite techniques is to do duck debugging, right? So everyone at Pesto gets a small rubber duck, right, at everyone's table. So duck debugging says that you need to explain the entire code to the duck, so that while explaining that code to the duck, you might find what's wrong with it, right? That's what you do first. You ask yourself. The second thing which you do is that you go on Google and then GitHub issues and then post it on Stack Overflow and then ask your friend, right? So what I'm trying to emphasize here is, do not ask your friend directly whenever you come across something, right? That'll only waste his time. Debugging deliberately. Now, this is super important. Like when we are actually debugging something, we came across some bug, then you actually freak out, or you just say like, how did this go wrong, or how can this be wrong, right? This is a common behavior. This should not happen, because we are actually writing code, and we should expect bugs to come out, right? It's like completely acceptable, right? So you should just stay calm, see what's happening, keep your head straight, and follow the step above. Don't fix it, reproduce it. I'm talking about bugs here, right? If you came across a bug and you fix it, that's not the right move. You need to reproduce it, you need to create a Loom video for it so that your friends know how to reproduce it, and then you should post, right? And always use common channel on Slack and common groups on Workplace and places where everyone can see what you're saying, right? So that everyone is on the same page at all times. The last thing, after coming across all of these things, like I never talked about any particular language, right? Because I feel that's irrelevant. What's relevant is your hunger, your willingness, and your passion to do something, right? Remember the first slide. You have like just 50% of your time left to create an impact. If you don't want to, no one can help you. So we have this culture at Pesto where we talk about 4 H's. This is our culture code, where we say you need to be happy, humble, honest, and hungry. If you just remember these 4 H's and have these values in you, no matter what you do or which language you code, at some point of time, you will succeed. The last one is my contact details. If you have any issues or if there is any way we could help you, you can, get in touch with us. In the end, just one plug, sorry, Mohan, right? It's like, at Pesto, our mission is actually to get you guys remote jobs at US tech companies, right? But why did we start this? I wanted to talk about that. These were the values which I wanted to share with you because I feel that these are the things which we should focus on first, right? But why we started this is because we realized that your opportunities should not be limited because of the place you're born at, right? The world is becoming connected and the world is becoming a smaller place and it's growing at a pace never seen before, right? And we believe that all of us should have the opportunity to go there and get those opportunities to, and the respect and everything else to make ourselves, that big, right? So it's like, we all should have that opportunity to make our mark. The biggest thing in that is that you need to realize that you deserve it and you can very easily get it. It's not that hard. Couple of instances I would share, like, couple of students who came into our program in the first batch were not much experienced. They had like a year of experience. They belonged to a corporate background, and they were working at a corporate company, right? They were not learning much over there. When they came in, right after 3 months, we were able to place them at 10x salary of their previous salaries, right? But the most beautiful part of the entire process was not the money, right? It was everything else which I just talked about. When I look at them now, their attitudes has changed, their learning curve has changed, the way they work has changed, right? And their learning curve just excites me so much more because I've seen them like 5 months before and then 5 months from now, and they've changed a lot. And one takeaway from this for me was that you are average of 5 people around you, so always make sure that those 5 people are the smartest ones, right? And nice people. 4 H's are important, right? Cool. Thank you so much.